The all-terrifying Abbadomon is here to end the digital world, and let's show you guys the build that I've been working on so far. It all stems from the Digi-Egg card, Negamon, which you want to be playing 4 copies of for sure. The whole idea of the deck is to reduce your play cost with anything that has Negamon as text within the archetype. The more Negamons that you have in the trash or in the sources of your Digimon's Digivolution cards in the battle area, the further play cost you get to reduce. Once you play out the Digimon with its effect, you tuck it from the breeding area underneath as its bottom source. And that is the main way on how you cycle the Digi-Egg cards in this deck, because Negamon itself cannot be pushed out into the battle area, nor can Digivolve in the breeding area. And that is where you utilize the inherit effects to redirect your opponent's attacks to slow the game pace down. Once you cycle through your eggs and have them in the battle area or in the trash, you want to place your AVAULT Core with Abbadomon's effect so that you can control the game state. Once you're ready, you push it out and annihilate your opponent's entire board by making multiple attacks and unsuspending and finish them off. So let's talk about the level 3s, and the only rookie that you need is the 4 copies of Soundbirdmon, which is your main searcher of the deck. When you play this guy out, you can grab anything that has Negamon in its text, as well as anything that has Abbadomon in its name, which you can easily get 2 hits consistently. Its inherit effect provides you all turns extra 1000 DP, which is really important to the core strategy. Level 4s, this is where the unique part of the deck comes in. Similar to Eosmon and Galacticmon with Venmons, you can play up to 50 total copies of Eismon Scatter Mode, and I'm running 14 copies of this card. The reason why you want to play as many copies of this card as possible, because it is your main filter engine to help you cycle through your deck, as well as pitch cards into the trash that you can pick them back up later on. Its inherit effect also gives extra 1000 DP all turns. Then we have the regular Eismon, which can Digivolve for 1 on top of a Scatter Mode. It has Rush and Collision, which is the main idea to help you finish off your opponents with a final attack which they don't see coming, as long as there's no unsuspended Digimon on the opponent's side of the board. And of course, because Collision is going to prevent you from winning. It also gives you Recursion from the trash to grab anything that you want within the archetype when it's deleted. It also has the new mechanic, Assembly -3. By stacking 4 Scatter Modes underneath it from the trash, you can reduce the play cost by 3, making it a 4 cost instead. With that, your Eismon can easily rack all the way up to 11k DP, which is massive for a level 4. Level 5s, I'm running 4 copies of Raremon. When you Digivolve or play out this guy, you get to de-Digivolve 1 of any of your opponent's Digimon. It also has the Undeletion floating capability to let you play something back from the hand for free that is level 4 or lower. But for every 2 Negamons that you have within the trash or in the sources in the battle area, you get to increase the level by 1, so you can easily play out another Raremon, or even in later stage of the game, you can even play out a level 6, which is going to be your Abbadomon instantly to set up your AVAULT Core. Its inherit effect allows your Abbadomon to unsuspend whenever attack target is redirected. This is really good for offensive and defensive applications. As for the secondary level 5 that is outside of the archetype, I'm running 2 copies of the EX9 Edimon, and that's mainly to force the opponent's attacks, which allows us to give an avenue to push out our own AVAULT Core and disrupt them. Its inherit effect rarely comes up because the only target that we can play from our deck is Soundbirdmon, but it does happen at times. That's it for level 5s. Now let's talk about level 6s, which you definitely want to run 4 copies of Abbadomon. When you play or Digivolve into this guy, as long as there's a total of 4 Negamons in the combination of your trash or in the sources of your Digimon in the battle area, you instantly get to play a AVAULT Core from your trash or from your hand into the breeding area for free. Its end of all turns effects gives you constant removal over and over again. By placing any Negamon and text Digimon to the top of its source, you get to delete the same level of the Digimon that you place. Other than just Digivolving into it, you can hard play it by reducing its play cost with Negamon, or you can even use Assembly to reduce its play cost, making a 5 memory play by tucking in underneath 4 Negamons from your trash underneath it. Now I know other than just Abbadomon, there was also Nidhoggmon, which was from the show, which we can expect to potentially get another form of level 6 support for this particular archetype. And if you guys are fans of this deck, then make sure to subscribe and turn on notification bell to stay tuned, as I'll be covering even more updates when the time comes. For the other level 6 that is out of the archetype, I'm running 2 copies of Shadow Seraphimon to give us Blast Ace counterplays to further disrupt and control the opponent's board, especially synergizing with Edimon as well at the same time. But that's it for level 6s. Now let's talk about the one and only level 7, 4 copies of Abbadomon Core. This card is insane with a ton of keywords: Collision, Piercing, Security Attack +1, Reboot, and Blocker. It has the ability to come out from the breeding during the opponent's turn when they make an attack, just by cycling the 4 Negamons that you have in the trash and sources back to the bottom of your Digi-Egg deck. You can reuse and start reducing your play cost all over again. Once it moves out, you want to tuck 3 Digimon sources that has Negamon and text in your trash underneath it to delete all your opponent's Digimon with the lowest level. You also get to do the same when you Digivolve and attack with it, which is not once per turn. So by having as many Digimon cards in your trash, you can continue to do this over and over again until you wipe out all your opponent's Digimon and security at the same time. And that's why it's really important to tuck in your rare mons at the right time and sequence them accordingly when you have multiple copies as you collision and you get to unsuspend again and again. That's it for all of our Digimon. Now let's talk about Tamers. I'm running 3 copies of the Starter Deck 15 tie, which is our main memory setter, but also gives us the draw power and extra DP buffs to make sure anything that is within our archetype when we redirect attacks or when we block to gain as much as possible to overwhelm the opponent's Digimon and slow them down from winning. And now let's talk about options. For standard black staples, I'm running 4 copies of Black Memory Boost to help us search, as well as 2 black scrambles to help us reduce our Digivolution cost whenever, especially we want to get into rare mon or Abbadomon itself. As for other options, I'm running 2 copies of Parabolic Junk to help us gain additional memory. The best combo I like to use it is on Soundbirdmon. During our own turn, we can chip away at the opponent's security. Since it only has 1000 DP, it's quite likely it's going to get deleted, so that we gain that memory there. If not, we can set up on our own Digimon and we can use the Negamon text to redirect the opponent's attacks into us during their turn and steal some memory, limiting their plays during theirs. Last but not least, I play 1 copy of Laplace's Demon just to force the opponent's attacks so that we can synergize with any redirecting, pushing out Abbadomon Core, or even blast acing into Shadow Seraphi. Tech choices and other cards that you guys can also include. This deck heavily relies on reducing play costs, therefore any Floodgate rookies that stops us from doing that becomes a huge counter to this deck. So there are several ways to remove them instantly, and here are my suggestions. First, you can include Kurisarimon, which you can digivolve on top of Soundbirdmon, and then you can delete anything that's 3 costs or lower, or you can play Queen's Device, which are instant ways to remove it. Or you can even play Metal Phantomon, which is an alternative level 5 to help you get into something. It also provides you self-deletion tools, and then you can also remove anything that is level 5 or lower on the opponent's side. Other aces you can include is Blitz Greymon from EX9. It can de-digivolve similar to Shadow Seraphi, itself is also a blocker, and it can alliance for attacks if you ever wanted to go for offensive plays. But the neat thing is that it has security attack +1 with its inherit effect, and sometimes you can also choose to digivolve Abbadomon Core on top of your level 6s so that it can gain that extra damage that you need. But I will admit, after playtesting, it doesn't happen often. Otherwise, you can also include Puppetmon Ace. Similarly, de-digivolve 2 and you get to bomb deck your opponent's Digimon as another form of removal as well. I've also considered teching in a copy of Omnimon Zwart from BT5, and that is because it can help us play as anything that's 7 play costs or less back from the trash, which we can play out Raremon to further de-digivolve, or Edamon to force attacks once again and establish a wide board presence to exert a lot of pressure. Another method to also force your opponents to attack into you, aside from just Edamon or Laplace's Demon, there's also Trident Arm, which does exactly the same thing, but also further de-digivolves your opponent's Digimon by 3 before doing so. Since this deck does take quite some time to ramp up, you can also play Digimon Emperor just to slow the game pace down, to slow down any of the rookies from pushing up, and as well as drawing additional cards since you do delete Digimon as well. Combos and how to play the Abbadomon deck. Starting with your mulligan hand, this has a very unique playstyle because all you want to focus on is digi-hatching as much as you can with your Digi-Egg. You want to see cards in the beginning that such as Soundbirdmon to help you search. You want to see multiple copies of your Eismon Scatter mode. By taking the advantage of being able to play multiple copies of this card is the idea for you to trash away your cards that are Negamon as text so that you can cycle and draw 2 and have as many as there is possible as layer resources to gather for your Abbadomon Core. Use Black Memory Boost to find your additional pieces, get into Raremon as soon as you can to de-digivolve and control and also float bodies back, and then eventually digivolve into Abbadomon so I can set up your Abbadomon Core in your breeding area. All the other cards that are outside of the archetype give you bonus effects such as Tie as a memory setter and also giving you draw power and DP buffs, Parabolic Junk to also gain additional memory. You want to force your opponent's attacks and synergize with your Abbadomon Core with Edamon or Laplace's Demon, or you can even synergize it with your ace plays such as Shadow Seraphimon. Since this deck has a very unusual and unique playstyle, rather than showing you guys line of combos like traditional decks, I'm going to show you guys what you ideally want to do in your first few turns to hatch through your eggs as quickly as possible. If you're going first, you want to see Soundbirdmon the most because as soon as you hatch your egg, you can play it out for 1 cost, reducing it by 2 with Negamon, and then go ahead and search. If you're going second and assume your opponent is putting you to 1, as a matter of fact, you want to go ahead and play Eismon Scatter mode, which will be for 3 costs. Using Scatter mode's on play effect, you want to trash a card away from your hand to draw 2. Generally, you want to prioritize trashing the Abbadomon Core just because it's not a useful card in the early stages. Second to that, I would also trash the regular Eismon for the same reason. Otherwise, trash away another Scatter mode, making sure that you have a healthy count in your hand. Cards with Negamon in its text that you generally want to keep in your hand are actually your Soundbirdmon, Raremon, and Abbadomon, so that you can get into it later on, because once you lose them, it's sometimes relatively difficult to find another one later on. With that, assuming your opponent continuously puts you back to one memory over and over again, the most important priority, like I mentioned, is to continue hatching as much as possible. Continue to play out your Eismon. With more Negamons that are on the Digillusion sources or in the trash overall, you get to further reduce the play cost. And now this scatter mode is now going to be for 2 costs, choking them back to 1, trashing a card away as well, and draw 2. One of the other important decisions during the early stages of the game is to decide whether you want to chip at the opponent's security or not. Or if your opponent plays a lot of Rookie Rush style aggression, you want to keep your scatter modes or your bodies on the board to keep redirecting with the inherent effect of Negamon. But at the same time, there are certain points of the game that you actually need to consider chipping away at least 1 or 2 of your opponent's security to set them down low enough so that AVAULT Core can finish them off later on. Otherwise, you won't establish any pressure or momentum in the rest of the game. So let's say go ahead and attack with scatter mode. If it ever gets deleted, it's totally fine, because that way we still get to utilize the Digi-Egg card from the trash to further reduce the cost by 1. Passing us back to 1 memory once again, we'll want to hatch and then continuously hard play stuff over and over. As always, the card that likely is going to be play out is generally going to be your scattered mode, and now it's going to reduce a total of 4 costs, paying 1 only. And as you proceed to the middle stage of the game, this is where you want to start to consider getting into your level 5, such as your Raremon. If you have Black Scramble, then that will be perfect to pay the 2 memory and Digivolve your scattered mode into a Raremon to de-Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon, controlling the board a little bit, and you can continuously redirect attacks. With Raremon's on deletion effect, you get to float bodies back, such as playing anything that's level 4 or lower to further search, play scattered mode, or you get to further increase the level by 1 for every 2 Negamons that are currently around the board and in your trash as well. So if there's at least 2, then you can play a level 5 by floating back another Raremon, disrupting your opponents to de-Digivolve once again. Once your opponent puts you back to 1 memory, and if your final egg, you want to make sure that you hatch and also utilize it, because at this point you want to have access to Abbadomon to ramp into your AVAULT Core right away. So as usual, let's play out a scatter mode, and this time it's going to be reduced cost by 5, paying 0 memory. And then now we want to go into Abbadomon for the 3 costs so that we can set up our AVAULT Core in the breeding area, since there's a total of 4 Negamons present. One of the important things to keep in mind is that you want to tuck stuff at the end of the turn underneath it as well. And this is where the resource management part comes in, because if you can delete your opponent's Digimon at the end of every turn with Abbadomon, then that's fantastic. But if not, you want to preserve your resources in the trash as well, so that when AVAULT Core comes out, it has sufficient amount enough to then use its effect to wipe out your opponent's Digimon. As we proceed into the second phase of the game plan, once AVAULT Core is established, and if our opponent attacks into us, we get to bottom deck all the 4 Negamons from both our trash and our sources to push AVAULT Core out, by making sure that we have at least 3 sources from the trash as well, and tucking it at the very top of its stack. We get to delete all the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level. Afterwards, we can block the attack and also get to unsuspend, thanks to Raremon, which is one of the most important inheritables that you want to tuck under when you go into AVAULT Core. Generally, in most cases, the opponents will think twice before attacking to try to play around your AVAULT Core effect. And this is where sometimes all these cards that force your opponents to attack come in handy. And this is why, say for example, you're at 0 memory after setting up your AVAULT Core and you need to end your turn, where you can play Laplace's Demon to put them to 1 to force one of their Digimon to attack, or you can Digivolve into Edamon, which is why it's really important to establish level 4s present on the board for this opportunity to go into it, to also again forcing the opponent's Digimon to attack. And once they do, we cycle back the Digi-Eggs from the sources and from our trash, which we can reuse all over again and push out AVAULT Core. Once it's pushed out, we can repeat the same effect, deleting all their lowest level Digimon, and we can even threat the Ace counter timing to blast Digivolve into Shadow Seraphi in combination together, and then block an attack, minus something by 5k as well at the same time, and also unsuspending because attack target was switched. Or alternatively, if the opponent puts us to 1 memory, and we haven't pushed out AVAULT Cores with its own effect just yet, we get to keep our Digi-Egg Digivolution sources underneath so we can continue to redirect attacks. So in our own turn, we'll push out AVAULT Core ourselves, and then tuck our sources underneath to delete, and then we swing. If the opponent has any Digimon on the board, it's going to be collision. They're forced to block. We'll pierce and take down their Digimon, as well as getting to unsuspend with Raremon, and then deal 2 checks with 17k. And like I mentioned before, having Raremon in your inherit effects is one of the most important aspects when it comes to potentially going lethal and OTKing your opponents, is so that you can swing once again, and if you have another one, you tuck, because if they have another Digimon on the board, it forces them to collision, block because it's switched or changed. I get to unsuspend once again, pierce for another 2 checks, and repeat again and again. And you can use these other bodies to finish the game off as well. Generally, when it comes to playing this deck, AVAULT Core and Abbadomon doesn't really have good protection effects, so they're relatively easily removed. So there might be even situations where your opponent was able to annihilate everything in your board, and you have everything in your trash. But with 1 memory left and nothing, this is why it's important to have a regular Abbadomon in your hand as a potential secondary play, because you can use its assembly -6 to tuck 4 Digi-Eggs underneath it to play it for 5 cost. And because once it's played out, there are 4 Negamons in the sources or in the trash out like that, so that you're not giving your opponent a lot of memory. This is where you can recycle your core back from the trash and have it pressure ready to go once again. And because it's much more in the late game, you now have way more sources to utilize in your trash to repeat this combo. And once you push out and start attacking and tuck a ton of stuff underneath, just like before, sequencing your Raremons as you attack and unsuspend and collision, and finish your opponents off that way as well. And this is exactly how you keep the pressure on with AVAULT Core over and over again, and go for the grind game, or otherwise eventually once your opponent's not able to out your resources anymore, you will go for the explosive damage combos to finish them off and win your games. Alternatively, as you keep on attacking and keep on adding sources underneath, once you dealt enough damage to your opponents, if you don't have Abbadomon here present on the board, since your opponent may have deleted it right now, and your opponent is at 0 security and using AVAULT Core clearing out all your opponent's Digimon, this is where if you have 4 memory, you can go for the final play to play out Eismon, to assembly from trash with 4 scatter modes, reducing the play cost by 3 so that you pay 4 memory instead, so that you can use this to rush for game. And one important thing to remember when you're going for this play is to make sure that your opponent doesn't have any unsuspended Digimon on their side of the board, because Eismon itself has collision. The Mega Machine Playmat and Sleeves are live on the AVAULT Store, so make sure to grab yours right now. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, whatever you are. See you in the next video, and this is AVAULT signing out.